Hello, it's Spence, the evil genius from Witch in the Laboratory, with your lab secrets tip of the day. Alright, I tell you what, I'm feeling generous today. I've already given you a 3-part bonus to a 2-part tutorial, but you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw on a 4th part for free. Why? Because my guilt has overtaken me. Yes, it is true. I feel guilty. Why? Because at the end of the bonus, I had only shown you one way that you can adjust your header alignment. And while it's perfectly suitable, it may not solve everybody's problems. So let's go back here. What I had done is I had shown you how to hide that link for the original header URL, this divide header H1A we made to a font size of 0. And I had shown you how to move up the content of the navigation menu using the navigation wrapper. If I go over here again, I use the divide ID navigation wrapper and I set the margin top to -57, margin bottom to -17. And by the way, your mileage will vary. One of the things I needed to point out too, before I go any further, is that in order to apply the CSS changes that you put into play in your Firebug, you need to copy those little element blocks. And then what you want to do is you want to paste them into a text editor. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a word processor. And be sure you have the style tags. I'm going to make this larger so you can read it too. That's a little easier probably. Maybe even bigger. I love Screener because it's so real. I have to do everything on the fly, no editing allowed. So basically you'll take this information now and you'll paste it into the admin dashboard in your ads and custom HTML area into the head and metadata box. We've done this a dozen times before. I'll post that in the show notes. But basically that's what you're going to need to do to change all this stuff permanently. Otherwise, as soon as you reload the page, this will all go away. All right, now here's the part 4 information. Let's say I wasn't happy with the height of the header. Maybe the header image wasn't so great, or I just didn't think it was working. In fact, let's make it better. Let's reset this page. I'll show you exactly what you can do to adjust it. Instead of from the bottom up, adjust it from the top down. So, all right, let's reload. Start from scratch. Right click, inspect element on that title. I'm going to get rid of that font by making it 0 pixel. Now, here's the thing. Instead of bringing the bottom up to the top, let's get rid of the top spacing. How do I do that? Well, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click that I'm in the zone. I can right click and inspect element. And you'll notice that puts me in the zone here of a divide ID called header. And when I roll over it, yes indeed, it does in fact highlight in blue. So I'm going to click on that. Now I go to divide header and I double click just to the right of the existing element ID, which will give me a new line. And I'm going to go ahead and say height, hit enter, and now I'm going to put in an arbitrary number. Remember I told you that my image was 130 pixels high. So let's start with something in that range, 130 pixels. Be sure you put the PX in there. And while that works pretty good, it's not quite good enough. So let's use the down arrow to continue changing until, you know what, yeah, that's not bad right there, about 118 pixels. I could even go farther if I wanted. For example, if I wanted to overlap some of the elements of the underlying header, I could go to 87 pixels. Now the thing I want you to keep in mind is the header area is one block and the navigation area is another block. They each have their own elements and their own IDs, and they each can be styled differently. So when you're using CSS, be sure to not think only one-dimensionally. Think whether or not it may be better to shrink the top to bring the bottom up instead of shrinking the bottom to bring it up to the top. Either way, you'll end up with something that's nice and balanced as long as you use your trusty Firebug and then go ahead and copy and paste those changes, like I said, into your text editor. And then you'll put that in the ads and custom HTML area in the head and metadata area box. Well, I tell you what, it's time for me to go take a break. 4 tutorials in a row. You guys have a lot to practice. We'll see you next time on Lab Secrets.